The last chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen is commemorated with a final color spread. Haibara and Kashimo are intentionally cut off at the top. We have Mekamaru holding Miwa's hand, which is of course a first for him, so he's having quite the reaction. Meanwhile, Maki seems to be making it clear that she's with Yuta. At the same time, Hakari and Kirara have never been a secret. So yeah, this is the closest we're gonna get to any character pairings. In the last one, Yuji and his classmates set out to find a curse user who's been harassing a woman and her fiancé by making his face look strange. After checking the lady's body, Nobara concluded that there are no markings or curse seals on her. She could only assume that the curse user must be close by. Since they're a person operating from a distance, she figured that leaving would be a good idea. Yuji wondered if Megumi thought they might be in the user's range. His friend considered the possibility. This person's technique might be stealthy by nature, or they might be very skilled at manipulating cursed energy. Either way, this could end up being a bit annoying. Nobara wondered if the woman's fiancé appeared to be normal at any point over the last 2 weeks. The victim didn't see any change, but wondered if it may have been possible while she was asleep. Assuming that last bit isn't the case, Megumi deduced that they are up against a range of at least 50 meters. But to be safe, they would work with 100 meters in mind. Yuji deferred to him yet again when it came to their plan of action, since they're in the middle of town. Unlike in the culling game, there is a lot of civilian activity going on. Even if they check all the buildings, there will still be plenty of blind spots to their investigation. Then again, he expected to be able to notice the technique's activation if they managed to secure a good visual position. That's when Yuji came up with the idea that they should go to an open field. Megumi claimed that it would work if their target is a total idiot, which made Yuji wonder what that makes him, since he's the one who came up with the plan. Nobara mocked him for it. She then suggested that they give the lady to Yuji since he can quickly rush out of the user's range. Megumi responded that even if the technique collapses once they're out of range, the target would still need to be a total moron to immediately reveal themselves afterwards. They're unlikely to follow, so standing out was the last thing that they needed to do. So it didn't take long for Yuji to get his revenge. To that, Nobara asked if an all-expenses-paid trip for the couple would be better. Again, Megumi seems to be the only real problem solver among them. Although that could work, the curse user probably knows their target's location thanks to their technique. Meanwhile, all these guys can do is rely on their eyes. There's no point in trying to stalk the stalker. Yuji added that if they send the couple on a trip, the curse user might just deactivate their technique and wait for them to return. Megumi couldn't deny the possibility, but didn't want to let their target be the one to decide what comes next. Meanwhile, the young couple seemed to have no idea what they were talking about. Yuji was getting sick of Megumi pulling their ideas apart. Nobara added that Megumi was assuming that the curse user is actually smart. Yuji was sure that there must be plenty of people who are even dumber than they are. To prove their intelligence, the pair decided to challenge Megumi to a game of Othello, which is a Japanese version of Reversi. It seemed to Megumi like these two might be compensating for something. Young Scarface stepped out and borrowed some sandals. He clarified that the plan is to have the couple leave the technique's range, and once they return and the technique is reactivated, the three of them will pounce. Now Yuji was getting peeved. He insisted that they've been saying exactly that all this time. That's when Megumi let them know that his plan involves theirs. They made their way to a 40-floor condo. It was definitely taller than 150 meters. The couple would pretend to visit a friend on the top floor, taking them out of the technique's range. Kiyotaka would keep an eye on the buzzer and the entrance. Meanwhile, they'd head to a good lookout position and wait for the technique to reactivate. Megumi reminded them that they're dealing with a very obsessed stalker here. They didn't find any secret microphones on the premises. As long as this person doesn't have a technique for listening in, their trap should work. Once they made it up to the 40th floor, the lady noticed that her fiancé's face had gone back to normal. All three sorcerers detected the reactivation. Nobara locked eyes with the culprit from a distance. The creep was shocked to see her. Nobara answered the phone while leaping down. She received confirmation that the man's face is normal again. Nobara scaled the building with her hammer, which looks really cool. Yuji joined her approach by rapidly dashing along the side. That was easy enough. But once they landed, the pair was thrown off by each other's distorted appearances. This seemed to be an adequate distraction, so the man decided to leave the fools in the dust. Unfortunately for him, not all of his pursuers are dumb. Megumi managed to secure the lurker with minimal effort. He scolded his friends for taking things so lightly, which prompted them to make an eye pun. They cuffed the man and attempted to confirm his identity with the victim, but much to his shock, she claimed to have never seen him before. That set him off. The sorceress stood between them. The aggressor decided to jog her memory by asking who bought her the bag she's carrying around. That made all of their eyes go wide. It's also when everything started to make sense. The sorcerers enjoyed some vending machine coffee together. This was a petty, one-sided grudge. As it turns out, the woman works at a hostess club. Simply put, a Japanese establishment where men pay to talk to and be served drinks by attractive women. Very often, hostesses receive gifts from their customers, and this guy spent a whopping 1 million yen to buy this engaged woman a Birkin bag. To Yuji, that sounded like a pretty awesome job, which made Nobara call him clueless. But honestly, for as clever as their plan turned out to be, they're still pretty clueless students. I'd like to think that a proper investigation would involve inquiring about the victim's occupation and if she can think of any issues from there. Especially if you're able to confirm that the situation involves stalking. Yuji looked over his shoulder. Their perp was pretty bummed out. Yuji slapped the top of the car while trying to cheer the guy up. He even made a joke about the man not facing execution, which is exactly what he himself faced at the beginning of the series. To that, the culprit wanted to know what they were going to do with him. He knew he was way too grown to be so indirect, yet even still, he placed all the blame on a hostess and disturbed her for 2 weeks. Non-stop, I might add. That is not normal. This is way worse than down bad. He needs a psychiatric evaluation. From there, we have a flashback to Yuji's final moments with Gojo ahead of his fight against Sukuna. This conversation is the reason why Yuji didn't need a letter of his own from their teacher. At the time, he assumed that after switch training with Kusakabe, Gojo would be next. And I know some of you guys hate how I pronounce his name, among others, but nobody ever comments how to say it properly. I am not Japanese, and I read manga more than I watch anime, so when it comes to pronunciations, I can be like a substitute teacher. Anyways, Gojo couldn't really point to any objective issue with doing that, but he had his reservations. He wondered if the world hasn't already had enough of him already, which is a line that pissed off many fans. Gojo wanted Yuji to be more forward-thinking. There's no doubt that he'd want his student to carry on his dream in his stead. But if he loses, his students will have the opportunity to grow further than he was ever able to. If nothing else, he believed that at least one of them should be able to forget about him and develop strength that is totally different. Yuji was thrown off by that since he didn't believe any of them would ever be able to forget about him. In fact, Yuji wasn't sure his master was acting like himself at all. He sounded timid, so Yuji wondered if everything was alright. Gojo laughed at Yuji's perspective. He insisted that this was actually a level of confidence that he has never had before. His final words were an expectation of great things to come from Yuji. Yuji was satisfied by the man's ability to recognize his own faults. After taking some time to reflect, he even wants the guy to help them on their next mission. He gave the man a big smile and echoed his late master's words. After that, Nobara wondered what Yuji ended up doing with Sukuna's last finger. Casually, Yuji admitted to throwing it away. That was not what Nobara expected at all. Yuji told her not to worry. The thing is not dangerous anymore. In fact, it might even work as a decent talisman. He looked at his own hand, which is still missing fingers, and was sure that everything is okay. Then he clenched his fist with a smile. At a crossroad of souls, Sukuna ran into Mahito, who was intrigued to see the king of curses. Sukuna smiled while recognizing that this is their third conversation. Because his technique involves a soul, this conversation can be chalked up to vestiges. This is the pathway that souls go down. There was something on Mahito's mind. He was sure that Sukuna lied to himself and everyone else. He was not living up to his own reputation. Sukuna wanted revenge. Revenge against those who hated and sought to execute Yuji. and the wording of unwanted is reminiscent of what we know of Sukuna's upbringing. The king didn't see why that matters. He just did whatever he wanted to, simple as that. Although, now that he thinks about it, he could have gone down a different path. More accurately, he could have gone down two paths. Now, I'm gonna be real with you guys, I have no idea who this woman is on the left. For every character I can think of, there's a reason why that's probably not the case. And it seems like I'm not the only one having this issue, which is an interesting choice for the final chapter of a series. Sukuna admitted to being a victim to his own curse. He placed a hand on a crying Uraume's shoulder. If there ever happens to be a next time, Sukuna thought it might be nice to walk down a different path. Mahito was frustrated by Sukuna's cowardice. Sukuna didn't mind. After all, he lost. Mahito couldn't believe that he was the only one sulking and continued to throw a temper tantrum. From there, we get to see all of Gojo's successors together in their various friend groups. Elsewhere, the door of a wooden shrine creaked open. Inside was Sukuna's final finger. And there we have it. This was a very abrupt end to a series with all the potential in the world. The sheer volume of unresolved elements and unanswered questions is astounding. For me, this was a solid chapter, but not exactly a solid ending. If nothing else, I'm more convinced than ever that this series would flourish with a sequel. At the same time, this approach doesn't make a continuation sound that appealing. But honestly, as dissatisfying as this may be for many, I don't think that'll be the prevailing sentiment down the road. When this stuff hits the anime, it'll be such a spectacle that most people won't mind at all. Sukuna vs Gojo alone might be the biggest fight since Goku vs Jiren back when Dragon Ball Super was airing. But if you're confident that you'll feel the same way regardless, make sure to let us know how you feel about this chapter in the comments. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.